Alright, this next turn was the Revolt row of the political index, which is down here, third from the bottom. Our numbers this time are 2/4. This one took me a few reads to get through. Basically what you're trying to find out is if a settlement, a union settlement, has become in revolt. And there's a whole bunch of modifiers for this as well. For example, if we wanted to make a roll for this settlement, which is Norlin, there's 2 Union mobile units in it. We would have to roll the dice and add 2 to that number. It's basically what I tried to do once. Because I had 2 rolls, I figured I'd try to turn one of the Union occupied hexes and then one of the Union non-occupied hexes. My roll was a 4, add 2 is a 6, nothing happened. If I would have been successful, a revolt marker would have been put on this and these units would have been removed from the board. When units are removed from the board, they are not eliminated from the game. They go off to the side and you can reuse them, which is a bit of a bummer to some degree. You want to be able to, I would think you'd want to be able to see an actual diminishing of their forces if you're the rebel player, and vice versa. You'd want to see that you're having some impact instead of there always being units that can come onto the board at any single time. Either way, that one was unsuccessful. Now, if that, there would have been other modifiers. If there were rebel forces in the hex, in one of the hexes directly surrounding that, we would have subtracted 1 from the dice for each one, I believe. By the subtraction of 1 for every 2 rebel units in a hex next to the settlement. So for every 2 rebel units, you'd subtract 1 from the dice. Now in this one, this is the Bama clan hold, which has already risen, but the hex is not in revolt. So I believe I'm doing this right, because it says, in addition, 1 is subtracted from the die if the settlement is in a clan hold that has risen and contains 1 or more warrens that have not been destroyed. So 1 is subtracted to the die roll, and I rolled a 4, which made me hit it anyway, subtracted 1, which is a 3. So this hex was in revolt. Now, something that I changed from the previous one too, because it's in revolt, I subtracted 1 from the political index, and I went back and the clan hold that I turned, I subtracted the political index as well for the warrens that now are occupied by the clan members, I guess. As horrible as that sounds, they're my new rebel forces, let's put it that way. I subtracted the number, the political number, from them as well. It doesn't say in either one that you do that, but I assume that you do, since at the beginning of the game when you put a settlement in revolt, you subtract the number from the political index. I don't see why it would be different when you take one over or help rise up a clan hold. So that's what I did, and that ended that turn. For the next step, it says if the political index stage is C, D, or E, or if it's foul weather turn, skip this step. The great thing that they have done is for the nomads in defection under C, and also for the U-nomads here, they have 0/0 for those 3, which just means that you don't play either of those in this turn. Yeah, and it does that all the way across. For anyone that doesn't have an effect on the turn, at least they've made it clear on there as well. And I think, let me turn the page here. That one is ignored. Let me flip back. Yeah, that 4 is ignored. So step 5 of this rebel political phase is, if the weather is clear, the rebel player places 1 partisan column on each revolt marker on the map that isn't flipped over to its ruin marker side. If the weather is foul, partisans are placed only on revolt markers in hexes south of the weather line. And if you can make it out here, there's a gray line that runs through the board here, goes down around here and up there. That is the weather line there running across the board. So our weather is clear, so we place a partisan column on each revolt marker on the map that isn't flipped over to its ruin side. And there are 1, 2, 3. So we just grab 3 and we'll put them, actually no, I'll put them all on top. Nah, you know what, let's put them underneath so I can still see that ruin marker for later stages in this game. There, and the third one goes over here. So 2 of them have 2, and one of them just has the 1. Now, I'll have to read about these partisan. I believe they're controlled by me right now. Let's see, what is the flip side? Yeah, the flip side is a ruin marker. I believe that they're controlled by me. So anyway. And then the last step is, on any game turn from January 2420 until the end of the game, the rebel player may announce that he is forming a continental army. So we're not at that stage yet, so I won't even, let's not even go down that path until we get there. That ends the rebel political phase. The next play sequence will be the rebel march phase. So I will refresh my memory about that, and we'll get into some movement, and that's when we'll deal with lines of supply and going through clan holds that are rebel controlled or union controlled, going through reserves, that sort of thing. We'll get some movement happening on this map. Alright, a fair number of reading on this one. The rebel march phase. Few things that we had to keep in mind. That was line of supply, zone of control, and then how much movement we had for the units. These 2 units here started in, well, they started in this hex pearl. Through the trees is 2 movement points. When you get into an enemy's zone of control, it's an extra 2 movement points. So it went 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. One of them had a, sorry, that camera wasn't on there. Here we go. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. This unit had a movement of 10, and this had a unit of movement of 14. You can use any or all of your movement. The other thing to keep in mind then is a line of supply. Otherwise your attack is halved, and it's, since these units came from this clan hold, we can trace a line of supply to a warren, which is this one, Pearl. So that wasn't an issue. You can also trace lines of supply to revolt markers as well. But that one is too far away, but it's okay because again, this warren was close enough. And then all I did was I moved a couple of units from this warren just a little closer. I wanted to keep 2 behind and move 2 closer, so in the next fight, if I survive this reading the chart, I didn't read it properly after I'd moved. If I survive this, I'll be able to add a couple of units the next turn. I'll be able to add a couple of units the next turn to help the fight for the next round. I did a similar move up here. These guys came from Lex and moved over this direction. And they can trace their line of supply back to Lex, so that was fine. I haven't decided if I'm going to move those guys up to Lex or not. Sorry, those guys up to Lex over here. Not sure I want to move too much. It's maybe not a bad idea. There was a couple of things to keep in mind. 2, 4, 6, 8. The air units can come in and help, which I just noticed this now. Oh man, it's a tough start for the rebels, I tell you what. There's not many places they can attack without they're going to take some major damage. But it's at this point of the game where I have to kind of just dive in, and dive in is what we're doing. So there you have it. Those ones moved there. I didn't move anything on this side of the board. I didn't like my odds on any of them because the Union is all up and down here, and I just have 2, oh, there's my finger there. I just have 2 rebel forces in there, and far too many Union units and Air Force to make it in any way, shape, or form beneficial to me. So I left all that alone. We'll see what happens to them for not just diving in. So we'll concentrate on this one. So line of supply, I just discussed. You always have to be able to trace it back by your unit's movement to their line of supply, which in this case is that Warren, so we're good for both sides for our combat. That also goes for movement points as well. If you're out of range of your line of supply, you can still move, but you can only move up to half of your allowance. Then we started looking at just movement in general, and I think I sorted that out. Yeah, it was just the whole terrain, and we were able to make it through terrain-wise, no problem. The borders around the clan holds, these dotted gray lines, they don't have any cost allowed to them. Either do these, which I don't think I discussed earlier on. These are totem hexes for the reserves. They don't have any sort of movement penalty with them either. Either do the Warrens, which are the ones with the cube on them. It's just the terrain that's under them, so there isn't an additional one for moving through a Warren. The only kind of movement that you can't do is if you're moving through an enemy Warren, or if you're moving through an enemy settlement, any sort of enemy settlement, you can't pass through them. You can pass around them, but again, if you're passing through their zone of control, there is the movement point penalty, which is, like I said, an extra 2 movements. So I think we've sorted that out. So now we get into finishing off of that with probably moving those units forward to Lex. And then we're going to try to get into some combat tonight. My battery light is flashing here on the camera, so I'll see how much I can get through. So you'll either see me continue tonight, or all of a sudden we'll be splash right into daylight. Well, we managed to fight and have a little bit of a positive effect for the rebels. As you can see there, we eliminated the 2 units that were there. Here's how the battle works. These units were 24 attack and 6. So that made it a total of 30. And they were up against an 8. So 8 into 30, you have to round down. So it was 3-to-1 odds. The terrain they were on was a dome. So 3-to-1 odds is this. There's the dome. There's 3-to-1. That's this column here. Now there's modifiers for this as well. The modifiers that came into play for us. Add 1 for each full unit or settlement in the defender's hex. So that is a settlement, so we add 1. There was 2 full units, so we add 2. So we added a total of 3. We rolled a 4, which gave us a 7, and that turned out to a 2/5. The first number is how many step losses we take as an attacker. The second was how many step losses they take as defender. So we flipped each of our chits over to take care of our 2 step losses, and 5 eliminated both of these with 1 left over. If you have any step losses left over when you're attacking units, nothing happens, they're just ignored. If you have more than 1 step loss when you're attacking a settlement or a dome, then it's the automatic destruction of that settlement, which then you would place a ruin marker over top of it. And then in our battle up there, we ended up on the 2-to-1 table for that one. Our modifiers were 2, and we still only managed, we rolled a 1, so we got a 3 total, which is a 1 step loss for us and no effect on anybody else. Another thing that I read as far as these air units, if they are, what did the PF stand for again? For support, if they're patrol fleets, their movement is cut in half if they're coming in for support. So because they had 8, their movement was 4, which only gets them 2/4. Oh shit. Their range though was 8. Oh, so wait a sec. The range of unit patrol fleets is half their printed range for this purpose. Sorry, it was half of the printed range. So a 4 still would have been 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one could have come in. Oh hell, so that would change that, because then that's an extra 6 added to it. And what was it? 4 and 4 is 8, plus 6 is 14, into 30 would have put us 2-to-1, which at 7 would have put us 2/4. So instead of a 2/5, it was a 2/4, which still would have eliminated these, still would have brought us down the 2 steps. So the result is the same. So it didn't make any difference, even though I did mess that up. The result was still the same. Because the range on this air unit is 8, it's just cut in half to 4. They still could have come in and supplied some support with the same outcome pretty much. So there you go. That's the end of the combat phase. I think that's all I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to tidy up and I'll come back tomorrow. The next step is we're into E now, which is the Union reaction phase. What we could have done here is moved forward as well. I've decided not to. I want to hang them back. I'm unsure of the rules as far as this is still in a clan hold that's Union occupied or Union owned. So I don't necessarily think that we have taken over that clan hold. That settlement, sorry. I believe on our political phase, we can see if we can turn that, now that it's free, we can turn it into revolt mode. But we'll see what happens, because there's a whole bunch of reaction and march and reaction phases coming up, where there's going to be a lot of units moving back and forth and moving around the board. We'll tackle all this tomorrow.